What's up guys, Todd Kelly, Shoe Shop Outdoors. Today we are talking camping stoves. If you spend much time in the outdoors, fishing, hunting, camping, canoeing, hiking, whatever, eventually you're going to get hungry, and having a hot meal is the only way to go. If you're looking at just boiling water for tea, coffee, or a freeze-dried meal, the little jet butane stoves are the only way to go. They're lightweight and they boil water really fast. But if you're actually considering cooking a meal, you're going to want a white gas style cooking stove, something where you can control the heat and make your meal. Two of the stoves here I have by MSR. The first one is the DragonFly, a classic stove that's been around. I've had this thing for 10 years or so. Just an absolute beast of a stove. Does everything you want it to when you're cooking. If you haven't used these style of white gas stoves, you fill them up with Coleman fuel, white gas, whatever you want to call it. Pump them up to get pressure into the canister. They have a little fuel valve right on the pump. And the DragonFly here has another valve for controlling the flame. When you're starting these things, you turn everything open, get a little bit of fuel into the bottom, shut it off, light that fuel, and you'll get a flame going. And that's to heat up the generator to make it hot so that the fuel coming into it vaporizes, and that's where you get your cooking flame from. The DragonFly here is the best stove for simmer control. So if you're cooking bacon, sausage, eggs, stews, soups, whatever, you can really get a fine adjustment with this stove, with this valve here at the stove, so you don't burn your food. This is the best stove on the market for cooking. It is really durable. We use this stove a couple hundred times a year, camping, fishing, everything. We use this stove a ton, and it has held up really well, really easy to use, almost no maintenance. Once every couple of years, I'll take it apart, clean all the carbon off, oil the pump cup, and make sure that all the little rubber O-rings are intact and don't have any tears in them. But just a great stove, really friendly, easy to use. The next stove we have here is the WhisperLite. This stove has been around for quite a while as well. I picked this one up because I got a good deal on it, and to be honest, I haven't been super happy with the stove. The flame control on this is really finicky. With your DragonFly, you can pump up your canister 5, 10, 20 times, and you have really good control of the amount of fuel going to the stove. On the other hand, on this stove, 1 or 2 pumps is all you're looking at doing to get a controlled flame. And the problem is they only have the one valve for controlling your fuel going to the stove. And it's not a very fine adjustment. You really have to play with it to not get too much fuel going to the stove. The other thing I don't like about the stove is heating it up. And there's the fuel line actually runs up and into the flame, back down to the bottom where it mixes with your oxygen to make your flame. So the problem I have with this stove is when you first fill it up with fuel to heat up the generator, if the wind is blowing the opposite way away from this loop of fuel, it doesn't heat up, and you're not going to get that vaporized fuel going to the stove. So you actually have to really block the wind really well, or turn the stove so that the flame is blowing on to the fuel line to heat it up so you get that vaporized fuel. The one thing is this stove is a lot cheaper than the DragonFly. The prices have really gone up in the last couple years. They're almost 50% more than they were 7, 8, 10 years ago. And this one is a lot cheaper, almost $100 cheaper than the DragonFly stove here. Still a great, well-made stove to cook on. It's just a couple little finicky things that make it a bit of a pain. If I'm only using one stove, I'm always grabbing the DragonFly over this stove. But it does work well. With all MSR stuff, it's built really well. Stuff holds up well. It's made to last. It's really rugged, meant to be in the outdoors, bashed around. So I'm really happy with that part of these stoves. I'll do a quick little demonstration on you how to light these things up and to get a cooking flame on them. We'll show you how to start the WhisperLite stove here. First off, you want to pump your bottle, but you don't want to pump it too many times. If you get too much pressure in your bottle, it's really hard to control the flame with this one. So just a couple pumps is more than enough. On the bottom of the stove here is your priming cup. You're going to turn on your bottle until you get white gas pooled up in the priming cup here. You'll light that on fire, and the flame is going to heat up this fuel line so that you're getting a fuel vapor into the generator, and that's what allows you to get the cooking flame out of the stove. We want to open our bottle until we get that fuel pooling in the bottom here. It does take a little bit with this stove, and we're starting to get a puddle here. You don't need to fill this cup all the way to get enough heat out of it, and we'll get that going. If the wind is blowing, you want to turn your stove so that the flame is heating up this section here of the fuel line, or block the wind. If you don't heat this fuel line up, then you're going to have problems getting a good flame going, and sometimes it will take a while. So you want to turn that stove to where the flame is going to heat up that fuel line. One downside of the WhisperLite is you do end up with a fair bit of carbon all over the bottom of it here, and it does make a little bit of a mess as everything's covered in soot. And once that flame starts dying down, we can crack our valve open. There wasn't enough flame to get it going here, so we'll light that again. And here is our cooking flame. Your control is with the bottle, and you really have to just play with that valve a tiny little bit to get a flame going where you can knock it down, where it's not too hot that you're going to burn your food, but you can get a simmer out of this stove. Just a little more finicky than the DragonFly. Starting up the DragonFly stove is a little bit different than the WhisperLite. We have the 2 valves, and the fuel will come out, and instead of a priming cup, there is this cloth wick at the bottom of it here that will heat up and cause you to get a fuel vapor, so you get a cooking flame on the stove. So we'll start by pumping our canister This one you can pump as many times as you want because you have a lot more control. We'll open up the bottle valve all the way, back it off just a bit, and that gives us fuel to this other valve here. We will open that up and get our white gas going and start that up. This stove is not picky about wind direction because the fuel generator is right in the middle here, so it doesn't matter where the flame's blowing, you're going to get enough heat to get this stove going. This stove also uses less fuel to get going than the WhisperLite. And as that dies down, we'll open up our fuel valve and we got a cooking flame going. This stove has great flame control. You can really dial it back. If you're just simmering food, you want to keep something warm and keep that flame going. This is the better stove for cooking with than the WhisperLite. Way easier to control. The only downside of this stove is it is a little noisier. But not that big that it's a deal breaker to cook with. Two great stoves that are well built, really rugged, have a ton of use on them. We're always using these things, even just going out for a picnic. It's nice to be able to heat something up and have hot food instead of cold, uncooked food or something that's cold. So if you have any questions or comments on either of these stoves, please put those on down below. I'm always checking the comment section. Hit the thumbs up, that really helps the channel. And if you're into more gear review, fishing or hunting content, please subscribe. Anyways, thanks for watching.